Hi, I'm Marty Cohn, and welcome to Brattleboro Community Television's Meet the Candidates 2022. This series affords you an opportunity to hear from the folks running for elected office. Today, our guest is Wendy Harrison, who is running for Windham County State Senator. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Marty.
Okay, so let's start off with some kind of basic questions. Why do you want to be Windham County State Senator?
That is the best question of all.
No, you haven't heard my last one. Okay. Wait till we get to the end.
All right. I want to be a Windham County State Senator. I want to represent this county in the state Senate because I care and because I know how to make government work for the people. That's the short answer.
All right. Well, I like short answers. All right, but there's a number of other people who want to be state senator of Windham County. What separates you from the other candidates who want to be state senator?
I think it's a combination of my professional experience and my personal experience. Professionally, I've been in government for 30 plus years, primarily in local government and regional government. In Vermont, I've served as the town manager for Rockingham and Bellows Falls. It's a double position. And then I also served as the interim town administrator in Vernon and the interim city manager in the city of Winooski. So I have a good sense of how communities in Vermont work, what they need and what they don't need. I've also worked in economic development. I currently serve as the chair of the CEVEDS board, if you're familiar with CEVEDS.
Sure.
It's so I have a lot of experience in economic development, which hits all sorts of sectors that I'm sure we're going to talk about. And then on the personal side, I've been a mother, and that caused my career to be more of a zigzag. It wasn't the typical straight shot in the local government world, and that taught me a lot. I'm glad I had that experience, and I appreciate that I was able to make choices between work and part-time employment, and my kids. I was able to juggle. And so I really know the importance of both childcare and paid family leave for both parents, for the mother and the father.
Great. All right. Well, listen, magic wand, you're elected. What would be your top 2 priorities?
It's hard to just pick 2.
I told you, these questions are not going to be easy.
But the climate action plan actually includes a few of things. So one of my first priorities would be the climate action plan implementation, which has already begun, which I think is great, focusing particularly on transportation. I have a lot of experience in both public transit and just roadway design, bicycle, pedestrian. And what I would focus on are the immediate benefits that are available, which are especially important now with gas prices. Vermont has a great program for encouraging folks to use and purchase electric vehicles. Between the state incentives and the federal incentives, it can be the same price as a gas car. And with gas prices going up, that's really important. So what the state needs to do is to prove to Vermonters that these cars work in Vermont conditions, in winter and on bad roads. And I have a hybrid. I tested it out in Chittenden County on bad roads, or I shouldn't say bad roads, challenging roads, and it worked just fine. So hybrids can do it. Full electric can do it. We also need to do a better job of chargers. We don't have enough chargers. It needs to be as easy as getting gas to make it really work. So that's one of my priorities. The other priority would be housing. I have a lot of experience in housing. I worked at Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust when I first moved to Vermont. Learned a lot about that organization, doing great work. And I also have experience from in other states about in housing, how to encourage housing both by private developers and public developers, because it's really important that it not just be the government that provides all of the housing. And the state has some great incentives for private landlords to renovate apartments, which is terrific. And there's also programs to increase the amount of folks in the trades, because that's a real problem is contractors can't find help, and then people can't find contractors. So that's a big issue. So I'd like to work on that too.
All right. Well, so now let's dive a little bit more into those. I'm not going to call them problems. I'm going to call them challenges, because I like that. So one would be the challenge of rising costs of food, fuel, and other goods. What can you do as state senator to address those challenges?
Those are challenges. As a state senator, especially for food's obviously fundamental. I think Vermont's done a really good job of keeping school lunches free. That's such an important program. So I would advocate for keeping that program. And it's not just school lunches, it's school breakfasts also. And when it's free for everyone, there's not the stigma of having to prove that you're eligible. So then more kids take advantage of that, because you can't learn if you're hungry. So free school lunches certainly, and making sure that those continue through the summer, because kids need food in the summer too.
Sure.
And Vermont has done that, so that's really important. For farmers, we need to continue to support CSAs. That's critical. To your comment about an opportunity, I see gas prices as a huge opportunity. It's a crisis and an opportunity. It will further encourage folks to get an EV. When you have an electric vehicle, it's equivalent to paying $1.50 for gas, $1.50 per gallon for gas. So that's a huge saving. And something I really like about the Climate Action Plan is that it saves Vermont families money. It doesn't just save the environment, which is obviously critical, but it also saves Vermont families money, which is fundamental. So I do see the gas crisis as an opportunity. Oil has never been our friend, in my opinion. When we're too dependent on oil, we just block ourselves in, and it's not good. So in transportation, we can make that transition, and also in heating. Heating is obviously in Vermont a huge concern, and the Climate Action Plan also has programs to help folks transition to other forms of heat. If I can go into a little bit of a story.
Go for it.
My family, let me step back just for a second. The way that the clean heat standard is designed, it's to encourage families when they are thinking of replacing a boiler. At that time, the state wants you to consider other alternatives. The state is not saying take out a boiler that's still functional, because that's a big expense, and that wouldn't make sense. So the state is focusing on that transition time when a boiler breaks. Now in my family, we had a boiler break two Novembers ago. We didn't have the time to really do a good analysis, because I had been with Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust. I knew that heat pumps were great, but that was all I knew, and we didn't have time. So we replaced that boiler. Then the next summer, we started doing our homework, because we have an apartment in our house. And we evaluated heat pumps versus boilers, and since then we've put in heat pumps for the apartment. We're saving money. We're not worried about oil prices. Switching to electricity is better in the long run, because the state does have impact on and control of electricity prices, which we don't have over oil prices.
Right.
So I know that was getting into the weeds.
No.
But I really do hope that people take the opportunity to look at this, because again, they can actually save money in the long term by switching. And right now there's federal money and state money, and it's really the time to look. I think inflation was your last one. And inflation's
Food,
really
fuel,
hard.
and other goods.
Yeah, other goods. It's very challenging. Countries can't even necessarily impact inflation, so it's very hard for our state. If we can make a good dent in food and fuel, that's great. I'm also impressed by Vermonters' frugality and how there's a tradition of not buying things you don't need. Right. That serves us well.
Right.
And gardening, making what we need. So that's really helpful, and helping each other. It's hard to ask for help. That's the challenging part. It's hard to ask for help.
But there's help if you need it.
Oh, definitely. No.
So let me go back a step, because just for the viewers, when you were talking about the Vermont Climate Council's Climate Action Plan.
Yes.
All right. What that relates to is really the climate crisis that's reshaping life here in Vermont. That plan that came out in December of 2021, and it is what I call a blueprint for climate action. So you've talked about this for a few things, but which pieces of the climate action plan would you take up? What would you do if you were elected?
I always look at transportation first, because first of all, it's ready to go. The clean heat standard isn't ready to go yet. We need to have some more conversations with the governor to have a plan that he'll support. But transportation's ready to go. It's already happening. We can make public transit better by tweaking there's some small changes we can make that would really help. Like, for example, in our area, there are some routes that end at 4:30, 5 o'clock at night. So if you take the bus to work, the bus ends too early for you to take it home. So you're not going to take it to work if you can't take it home.
Right.
So by just changing the time that it runs at the end of the route, then you can have folks take the bus.
Right.
So the bus needs to be accessible. We need to have good shelters, have Wi-Fi on the bus, have better understood schedules. That's a challenge. None of that is impossible to do, especially with additional funding that's been provided. We also need to keep walkable, bikeable communities. That's it's all a puzzle. It all works together.
Right.
So Vermont's really fortunate to have densely populated nodes of towns, basically, and getting from town to town is a challenge. You can do different kind of bus route for that, and you're never going to serve everyone exactly the same way. But I do want to mention there is transit for Medicaid and elderly and disabled that's available to anyone. You have to register for it and plan ahead, but there is medical trips primarily available for everyone, no matter where you live.
Wow, that's something that sounds like we need to
let
more.
yes, and actually
know.
Communication is really important, because there's so much that is available that people don't know about. It has been great to talk to people and find out how much they care about transportation. They care about the train. We just had the Ethan Allen service that is going to Burlington now. So hopefully we'll get the train to Montreal. The Vermonter's going to go to Montreal like it used to.
Right.
Get a second Vermonter, and there's some trains coming up from Connecticut and Massachusetts that are going to hopefully serve our area. So that'll help with economic development,
right.
Also, because I've met folks who have moved to Brattleboro because it's a walkable community.
Right.
They don't want to have a car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So we touched on. So let me bring up another challenge. You kind of alluded to it before. The housing crisis. I mean, it's great. We want to attract people to come to Vermont, but where are they going to live? What can we do in Montpelier to help alleviate the housing crisis?
Exactly. First, it's important to know that this isn't just a Vermont problem. It's a problem all over our country. And part of the challenge is that housing has become a commodity. It's used as an investment. It's not used just as a place for people to live. Many homes have been bought up for rentals, for Airbnbs. So we do need to address that. The state actually already has passed legislation that allows towns and cities to regulate Airbnbs. And Burlington has done that. And I like that approach because I think decisions are best made when they're closest to the people, because different towns have different opinions on Airbnbs. So some want to regulate them, some not so much. So that's something that, again, the state needs to communicate so that towns know what they're authorized to do. I think we need to make the the Act 250 process more predictable. There's a lot of complaints about Act 250, and based on experience that I have in other places that have a lot of development happening, developers value predictability as much as anything, and probably more than a lot of the other aspects of development. So if we can make the Act 250 process more predictable, we can do that in a way that still protects the environment and our quality of life and just the charm of Vermont. But we can certainly make it more predictable, and I could help on that.
Great. All right. I think that's an important one as well. All right. Let's talk for a minute about another challenge, public safety. What can we do to enhance public safety in Vermont?
Yes, and the violence has increased recently, which is alarming. It's complicated, as is everything. I think the increase is a result of poverty, fundamentally. COVID still has influences, and addiction, which is also obviously connected to poverty. And I know it's easy to blame things on out-of-staters, but what the Bennington County State Attorney has done recently, the action that she took to hold accountable a landowner, a property owner who had knowledge of and seemed to allow drug dealers to take over that property. I think that was a good thing to do. We'll see if it works. It's something new.
So that's only in Bennington County?
Well, it was the Bennington County State Attorney filed a suit for a particular property owner, or against a particular property owner at a property.
I see.
So I think it was only 2 weeks ago, maybe.
Okay.
But we'll see how that unfolds, because she's trying something that hasn't been done before.
Wow.
Because we really need to hold those property owners accountable.
Sure.
It's hurting the tenants, it's hurting the neighborhood, it's hurting the kids nearby. It's awful. Another thing we need to do is to make sure that treatment is available for folks who are suffering from addiction. Because when someone decides that it's time for them to be done, they need help, and they need help right then. They shouldn't have to wait. They can't wait weeks,
Sure.
which is a problem. One great thing about campaigning is actually I've gotten an opportunity to talk to a lot of folks, and so the thinking is changing in the community that both suffers from addiction and helps those who are suffering from addiction, and they're ready to try some new things.
Great.
And I think the legislature needs to support them.
All right. Now, here comes what I think is the toughest question.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Sure.
All right. What do you want voters to know about you?
What I would like voters to know about me is that I enjoy solving problems. I'm here to help. And if I am elected, please don't hesitate to contact me. about really any issues that you have. What I found previously when I was elected was I would ask people what concerns they had about the town, and folks would say, "Oh, they're so and so, but you can't do anything about that." And I'd say, "Well, try me," and I'd pull it out of them. And 9 times out of 10, if I couldn't address it personally or as part of the council, I knew who could. So please reach out and let me know your concerns, and also what you're happy with, because it's important that the representatives know what's working well so we don't mess it up.
Okay.
So I like to solve problems, and I like to communicate. So please feel free.
All right. Wendy Harrison, Democratic candidate for Windham County State Senator. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Marty.
All right. You can learn more by visiting the campaign website, www.wendy4windhamvt.org. That's Wendy with the number 4, windhamvt.org. The general election is Tuesday, November 8th. Remember, you can vote early in person. You can vote absentee by mail. You can vote absentee hand-delivered on Election Day. Whichever way works for you, please vote. Thanks for watching BCTV's Meet the Candidates 2022. I'm Marty Cohn. Stay healthy.